TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Palestinian Islamists perpetrate indiscriminate rocket fire from Gaza toward Israel's southern communities. The U.S. intelligence community's annual threat assessment openly regards the Islamic Republic of Iran as one of the 4 key threats to the national security of the United States and its Mideast partners. China calls on all relevant parties to the nuclear-related talks in Vienna to do away with any disruptive factors. Palestinian Islamists launched a rocket from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip toward Israel's southern communities last night, forcing tens of thousands of Israeli civilians to rush into bomb shelters within the IDF Home Front Command's instructed 15 seconds. Thankfully, the incoming projectile exploded in an uninhabited area, causing no injuries or damage. Subsequently, the IDF conducted a retaliatory strike overnight, targeting Hamas military infrastructure in the coastal enclave. According to the IDF spokesperson's unit, IDF fighter jets and attack helicopters struck a weapon manufacturing site, a weapon smuggling tunnel, and a military post belonging to the Hamas terror organization. Consequently, one Palestinian Islamist was reportedly injured. Turning to Washington, where the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence deliberated the U.S. intelligence community's annual threat assessment earlier this week, which openly regards the Islamic Republic of Iran as one of the 4 key threats to the national security of the United States. While the majority of deliberations, in the presence of Washington's top intelligence officials, were conducted behind closed doors, during the open session, Central Intelligence Agency Director William Burns acknowledged that the Abraham Accords, which brought about 5 separate peace agreements between Muslim-majority states and Israel, as a key ingredient to regional stability and security.
I believe the Abraham Accords, as I mentioned, I think in my confirmation hearing, were a very positive step for the United States, for Israel, and for the wider interest of stability and security in a region in which stability and security are often in short supply. I know it's the intention of this administration to try to build on the Abraham Accords and expand, the number of countries who are willing to engage and normalize with Israel. That's never an easy task, but I think it's a very important one.
Among other concrete challenges, the annual threat assessment raises the alarm with regard to Tehran's malign intentions at length, warning that it will actively pursue an aggressive foreign policy by a range of tools, including diplomacy, expanding its nuclear program, military sales and acquisitions, and proxy and partner attacks to advance its goals. And while the assessment further mentions that the iterative violence between Israel and Iran have the potential to escalate or spread, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines highlighted in her opening remarks to the Senate's committee that Iraq will be a key battleground for Iranian influence in the coming year.
Tehran is seeking to project power in neighboring states, deflect international pressure, minimize threats to regional stability. Iraq will be a key battleground for Iranian influence in the coming year, but Tehran will also continue to pursue a permanent military presence in Syria, destabilize Yemen, and threaten Israel.
Despite the assessment that the Ayatollah regime will seek to bolster its influence in Iraq and use it as a battleground against the West and Washington's regional partners, during a third strategic dialogue meeting, which was held last week in Baghdad, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken evidently pledged to his Iraqi counterpart that the United States would hand over all of its military bases in the country and redeploy a great number of its troops elsewhere.
واتفق الطرفان أن لا قواعد عسكرية أمريكية في العراق وعليه لن تكون هنالك أي قواعد أجنبية في العراق. هذا ما تم الاتفاق اليوم في نهاية الجولة الثالثة من الحوار الاستراتيجي.
It is important to know that the American pledge to withdraw its troops coincides with prolonged political instability in the Iraqi capital Baghdad, which consequently brought about a decision by President Barham Saleh to dissolve Iraq's parliament earlier this week.
وقعت المرسوم الجمهوري الخاص بإجراء الانتخابات النيابية المبكرة في 10 تشرين الأول المقبل.
President Saleh further affirmed his country's need for international assistance in ensuring fair and free elections in light of foreign attempts to influence the outcome.
نؤكد ضرورة العمل والتنسيق الفاعل والجاد بين الأمم المتحدة ومفوضية الانتخابات لتأمين الرقابة الأممية وضمان نزاهة العملية الانتخابية بما يساهم في نجاحها وبما يضمن السيادة واحترام القرار المستقل للعراقيين.
Meanwhile, in Tehran, the Iranian Foreign Ministry referred to the attack earlier this week on its Natanz nuclear facility as a crime against humanity.
What happened in Natanz was a bold act of nuclear terrorism on Iranian soil. There has been no casualty or contamination reported, but it could very much resulted in a catastrophic situation. So it can be considered under the category of crimes against humanity, which the Israeli regime has been doing that for many years now. Iran definitely would reserve all rights to respond under the Article 51 of the United Nations Charter.
Article 51 of the United Nations Charter asserts that member states of the world body reserve the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against it, until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. Meanwhile, in Vienna, the second session of talks on ways to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal by Russia, China, France, Britain plus Germany with Iran, alongside the indirect participation of the United States, is reportedly faced with increased challenges. In light of the bombing of the Natanz nuclear facility, alongside the Islamic Republic's decision to raise its uranium enrichment to 60% purity, tensions have seemingly simmered during the latest session.
We do think that all these developments have reinforced our conviction that what is needed most now as a top priority is to do away with any disruptive factors.
China naturally continues to maintain that the only way for a tangible breakthrough to occur is for the United States to lift its crippling sanctions on Tehran, which would then lead, at least per pledges voiced by the Islamic Republic's leadership, to reinstate internationally imposed limitations on the Ayatollah regime's nuclear program.
The very key of the current process here is to set out the detailed formula on sanction lifting by the United States.
Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up Cyprus once again in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world, in addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach, and we will see you again on Monday at the same time.